which came out in July. So as an overview of the report, at the start of May, we surveyed employers and employees across the UK to find out then how COVID-19 was shaping sentiment towards the UK economy, employment outlook, skills needed and career prospects. Now, clearly an awful lot has happened since May. So in early July, we went back out to market, and this time we asked 13,000 professionals what their views were on these topics again, so that we can provide more of an up-to-date snapshot, if you like, of how organisations, employees are faring as they consider their next steps in this new era of work which we're all facing. So here's some snapshots from the report, and I won't go through all of them, but just to give you some indication on how these have progressed and moved since May. So as it says there, 26% of professionals are confident in the UK's economic recovery in the next 6 months, and that's slightly down from May, 28%. So maybe there's a slight concern as we move towards more of the small bubbles down to 6 people, and the worry about a second spike. Maybe that's impacting a little bit on people's confidence. 43% of employers are actively recruiting, and that's up from 31% back in May. And then 48% of professionals rate their current prospects of their organisations positively, and that's up slightly from 43% back in May. And then the other one I'd pick out there was the 22% of professionals optimistic or very optimistic about the UK's current employment. That's actually slightly down, it was 27% back in May. So not too dissimilar to what the market was looking like back in May, but there have been some subtle changes in some of those areas. So now, in order to gauge on how organisations are faring in light of COVID, we asked them respondents to outline which phase they deem their organisation to be in, and ranging it from crisis through to rapid growth. Now, since the last survey, there's been a slight shift away from the crisis phase, which I think you probably would expect, really, with obviously the first phase was all about complete lockdown, everyone working from home, and total, it was just about getting through that and surviving it and moving everything to that crisis phase. And we have been a slight shift away from that. So if you look just at the SME, those in the crisis phase has decreased by 8% from May to 11%. And the percentage of those in the defensive phase has stayed similar. But however, there has been a rise in the percentage of SMEs that are in the business as usual phase. So that's 30% up from 25% when we went back to market in May. And the growth phase has seen a 7% increase from May up to 16%. So it's a similar story when you look at the large and very large organisations as well. So the percentage of those in crisis phase has decreased by 5% since May, and those in the growth phase has increased 5% since May. So fewer organisations, both in the private and the public sector, say they're in crisis or defensive phases than in May. 45% of the private sector organisations compared to 53% in May, and 35% of public sector organisations compared to 43% in May. So there's been a 7 percentage point increase in private sector organisations saying they're now in the growth phase, when within the public sector, that's grown and risen by 5 percentage points. So what does the research tell us about the sentiments towards the future and how this has changed during the course of lockdown? Since May, professionals who say they're confident or very confident in the UK's economic recovery in the next 6 months has remained steady, only decreasing slightly from 28% to 26%. The percentage of professionals who say they're not confident or not at all confident in the UK's economic recovery remains the same at 46%. Now, it obviously is impacted by geography as well. And if you look at where the areas are most confident in that economic recovery, that's in the northeast at 32%, and then also the East Midlands at 28%, and the southwest also generated figures of 27%. So just to give you some insight as to how those are impacted on via the via the change, obviously, in terms of as you look at different location. So how optimistic professionals feel about the UK's current employment outlook. So there's been a decrease in the percentage of UK professionals who are optimistic or very optimistic about the UK's current employment outlook. That's changed from 27% in May to 22% in July. And 24% are neutral, and 54% say they're not very optimistic or not optimistic at all about the UK's current employment outlook, more so than the 47% who said the same in May. So I think, again, we're probably experiencing the fact that it's gone on longer than maybe people originally expected it to. There was the initial thought that it would only be a few weeks / maybe a couple of months in lockdown, and obviously the whole process has taken a lot longer, and I think that's obviously maybe impacted on some of those factors. So now taking a look at the prospective return to the workplace, do expectations of employers match the preferences of employees? So there are some differences between employer expectations of how their teams will work in the coming months compared to the way of working employees would prefer. So, for example, in the next 3 months, 3/5 or obviously 60% of employers expect a mix of working within the workplace and remotely. However, only 36% of professionals would prefer working that way. 38% would instead prefer to work remotely in the next 3 months, and something only a quarter of employers expect will happen. And it's a similar story when you look at ways of working in the next 3 to 6 months, so the medium term. 70% of employers expect their workforce to work in a mix between the workplace and remotely, and that's compared to 52% of professionals who prefer working that way. Now, it's expected ways of working and employee preferences become much more aligned in the longer term. So in 6 months and beyond, just over half, 54% of employers expect that a mix of working in the workplace and working remotely will be the norm. And a similar percentage, 51% of professionals, will prefer working that way in the same time frame. So I think when you're looking at 6 months and beyond, that will become the standard. You know, if I look at what we're doing at Hayes, we came back voluntarily, or some of us came back voluntarily back in July. And last week we changed our situation that it's now employer-led. So we have a hybrid way of working, but we are expected to be in the office 3-4 days a week. So we've now got more of an established situation now in terms of having this hybrid way of working. So are professionals confident in their organisation's prospects? Obviously that's an important question to have because it has an impact on their enjoyment or ability to join the potential workforce for other companies as well. So when looking at how much confidence professionals have in their organisation's prospects, 48% rated their current prospects of their organisation as positive. Slightly small rise from May, was from 43%. 38% of neutral and 14% rated their organisation's prospects as negative. Now, a small proportion of professionals from large or very large organisations rated their organisation's prospects positively. It's now 51% compared to May at 48%. And a more notable increase in positivity is seen within SMEs. And that's where 44% of professionals rate their organisation's prospects now as positively compared to 38% back in May. So positivity also varies by industry, with healthcare at 58%, personal executive assistants at 55%, and we're clearly all on this call today a very positive bunch because the procurement are coming in at 50%, and social care 49%. So I think it really displays those particular areas that display the most positivity about their organisation's prospects.